Both cooling fans are commanded on, but I'm only seeing one running. I can do a lot of my tests right here at the relay socket. Whoa, watch your fingers. Hi, I'm Danny. Welcome back to the garage. In my last video, I showed you how the engine coolant temperature sensor tells the PCM when the engine's getting hot so it can turn on the fans. I also showed you an easy way to use a resistor in place of the temperature sensor. This simulates a hot engine so the PCM can command the cooling fans on. If you haven't watched that video, I'll put a link in the description. But what happens when engine coolant temperature sensor 2 is working correctly? The PCM is commanding the cooling fans on and one or both fans still don't run. In today's video, we're moving past the temperature sensor circuit and we're going to diagnose the rest of the system. We're going to check the fan motors, the wiring, the fuses, the relay, and the PCM control to determine where the problem is. I need to turn on the fans. This time, I'm going to turn on both fans using the scan tool. I'm using the Kingbolen K10 scan tool. I have a full video on this scan tool as well as a full video on the K8 and the K7. One thing I do want to note is I'm working on a 2009 Honda Civic EX with a 1.8 liter and it has two fans. So just because you command the fans on doesn't mean both fans are working. You have to actually get out here and visually check them. So I'm all hooked up. I'm going to turn on the radiator fans. And then I just say perform. So both fans should be running. If you look at this one here, this is the condenser fan. It's not running. And this one over here is running just fine. That's what we're going to check today. We're going to find out why the condenser fan doesn't turn on. Now, instead of just replacing the condenser fan motor, a fuse, swapping relays, we're going to actually diagnose the problem. That's going to make you and I smarter, and it's going to save us money on parts. So where do you start? A fuse? A relay? I like to start at the fan motor. I want to know if that fan motor is getting the power and ground it needs to turn on. If the fan motor is getting its power and ground and it's still not working, most likely it's going to be a fan motor. But let's diagnose it. Now down here, there's the AC condenser fan connector. It's attached to the fan shroud, but if you push this tab right here towards the front of the car, I can probably reach my other hand in here and dislodge it from the connector. There we go. And then it's just this tab right here. I'm going to go ahead and push that tab and I should be able to get that connector apart. There we go. So this end is going to go to the fan, and this is the end we need to check to see if there's power and ground. And there's a couple of wires on here. Let's see if I can move this around. Now the red one should have ground, and the tan one, that should be power. You can check for power and ground a couple different ways. You can use just a simple test light. I actually have a meter, and then I have a circuit tester. This one actually is the power scan, and we're actually going to use this. This is like a test light on steroids. To hook up a circuit tester, you hook it directly to the battery. The power side or positive side goes to the power side or positive side of the battery, and then the ground side goes to the negative part of the battery. And if you touch power, it's going to show you power, and it's showing me 12.5 volts. And if you touch ground, it shows green and 0 volts. I can also supply power by pushing this switch upward, and it supplies power to the tip. And if I go backwards on the switch, it supplies ground to the tip. And it also has another connector here, a pigtail. And this is always going to be a ground so you can power up a component. And I'm going to show you how to do that when we power up the fan. So let's go ahead and turn the fans back on. And then let's go ahead and just disconnect the radiator fan here. Let's just get rid of the noise in that fan, and then we can check the condenser fan connector. I'm going to use my electrical test kit. This makes testing electrical problems a whole lot easier. I'll put a link to this in the description, but you'll see me use this in almost every electrical testing video I do. All right, so I just put my wire terminals on. So this one here should be ground. It's the red wire. So let's go ahead and I'm getting ground. So the other one should have power. And it's got nothing. Now, since I'm here and I've got the power scan hooked up, it makes sense to me to go ahead and check that fan motor to see if it works. If the fan motor is frozen, it would have blown that fuse or caused other problems. But let's make sure the fan motor is capable of operating properly before we go any further, especially since we're right here. All right, so the fan motor is pretty simple. The black wire is going to be the ground side. The red wire is going to be the power side. Already checked it with the connector. And if I put it together here, the tan wire was the power one. And the tan wire lines up with the red wire here. So we're going to take our auxiliary ground on the tool. We're going to hook it on the ground or the black wire. And then we're just going to power up the red wire. And the fan should come on, but watch your hands. Perfect. So now we know the fan is capable of working. And we're definitely missing the power to turn on that fan. Let's go to the fuse box. So I've got everything back together. Let's go ahead and pull this off. Let's also make sure it didn't fix itself. I've had that happen before. Turn on the fans. All right, yeah, so we only have one fan working. Now that I know that the condenser fan isn't receiving the power it needs to turn on that fan, and if I add power and ground to the fan, it turns on okay, I need to come up here and figure out why it's not getting power. So the obvious reason is a possible fuse blown. So fuse number 6 and number 15, I need to check them. And then we could also swap the relays, or better yet, let's check the socket and actually check the relay. So I'm going to remove the condenser fan relay. I've got the key on right now, and I've got the radiator fan disconnected. That way it doesn't turn on. So we're going to check for power. This one should have power. It does. And this one here should have power. And it does. And that just checks the fuses. So this one should go down to the fan. And I've got it disconnected, so it's not going to show anything. And this one here is going to be the control circuit. So if I turn the radiator fan on, perform, this should turn green. And it does. So that means the computer's actually giving the signal to turn on that relay to send the power down to that fan. But for some reason, it's not getting the power down to the fan. And that's most likely because of a relay. And I can test this relay, and I have a full video on how to test a relay. But let's just go ahead and swap it with the radiator fan relay. We'll put that in the condenser fan slot, and the condenser fan is going to go in the radiator fan And I could have done this right at the start, but then what kind of video would I have had? All right, so now let's command the radiator fan back on. Okay. And perform. The condenser fan's working fine, and the radiator fan doesn't turn at all. So definitely confirms a bad relay. So let's install a new relay, and the fan should come on. Let's see. And there it goes, the fan's on. I hope this video was helpful today. I'll put links to all the tools I used and links to the videos that I talked about. I'll put all that in the description. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Now that I identified all the pins, this is going to be a power. This one also is going to be a power. These both come from the fuse. This one's the PCM that tells the relay to turn on and off. I'm going to go ahead and turn it on right now. You get a green light, that's the signal, and you saw the fan come on. And then the last pin right here, this goes directly down to the fan. So if I wanted to test this pin, the wiring all the way down to the fan, I would just have to push the power button. And I don't recommend you ever doing this unless you're absolutely sure where you're sending power. And I'm sure. And there's the condenser fan turning on.